so although the rebuild of these flippers with the new coil stops, plungers, bushings and the rest have improved the strength of the flippers, and they clearly, after looking at them, needed to be replaced. I decided I was actually just going to go the whole hog because the coils look, the solenoids themselves look a bit tired and worn out, and I've gone all this way, I may as well get some new coils, so I've ordered these from rtbb.com.au. So the other thing that impacts the strength of your flippers is the leaf switches on your flipper buttons. The ones I've got are a bit tired, so that's going to be that. So this is where we got up to, and here is the new solenoid. There's the old solenoid. So this is your power, positive power, and this here is what goes back to the driver board, which is where your transistor grounds when it's fired effectively, and when this fires both your high power and your low power circuit within the solenoid fires, and when it fires, it separates the leaf switch, which means that only the holding coil circuit is then the weaker circuit of the two is fired, because this switch here will separate so that you don't get power to the central lug, which is for your high power circuit, and this is always on, and the power gets this via the switch. So as that opens up, it breaks the circuit there, which stops the power going to the central lug. So when you look at these, you'll see that on your solenoid you've got diodes, and you've got a banded side and a non-banded side. So what you need to do is to make sure that when you put this on, that you put your power on the side where the band is on each of these. So you're going to put your brown wire, in this case, this is your power cable, goes onto these two lugs, with this lug, the one coming from the end of stroke switch, the central lug, and then this, the completely non-banded side, goes back to the board. Okay, so we're going to take that off. Start by just clipping these off. I find desoldering it's a waste, so you may as well start with a nice fresh bit of wire. The wire's it's long enough. The only one that's a bit short is really the one that goes back to the end of stroke switch. So let's just strip these wires quickly. This one's going to the central lug. Okay, so what I tend to do is I just twist these and then just create a little U. That's worked horribly. I'll just solder these on quickly. So you can see those are on now, and you can see, I'll zoom in, the side, the banded side is always there. So this is the lug on which the wire that goes back to the driver board or back into the board will go. So we're going to now get that ready and put that on. So we zoom back out again. So that's our orange wire in this case. So cut that off. We strip that. Pop that on. Okay, we'll just solder that in place. Okay. So that's the soldering work done. Now it's just a matter of removing this. So you would have seen before that the thread on this base plate was damaged, so I had to put a nut on it. So to actually replace this, I'm going to need to remove this whole plate so that I can get in on this one. So let's just take those 4 screws out. Get access to the base of the base plate where I put a little nylon nut on at the base to secure the coil stop. So, okay, once that up, so I'm going to have to take the flipper bed off. As well, because I can't get the base plate off without being able to remove the flipper. It's a bit painful. The one on the other side is going to be much simpler because I didn't have this issue. Okay, that probably would have been the easiest way to actually get this out in the first place, to be honest. Okay, so there you can see the nylon nut. So let's get that out quickly. Get the coil stop out. Actually, I probably don't even need to. Now that we've got this out, we can just remove these screws from the front bracket. Okay, so once you've removed this, you don't actually need to remove the plate. Okay, let's take the old, so that coil sleeve was replaced last time. That's the old solenoid. Let's put the old coil sleeve back in. Okay. So the spring goes on the inside. Spring washer. That goes in like that. And now we're going to put these back in. I should put some lock nut fluid on these. So I just use some of this, just Loctite. So just a little bit of that on each of the screws. Before I do that, I'm going to actually just get this really tight, this bracket at the back. Okay. Okay, so that one's tight. Stuff in. Don't forget your spring, washer. It goes on like that. Okay, so let's get. You've got the washer on. You've got your Loctite on the end of your screw, and in we go. And once you've just got it in loose to start with, you can get the second one in. So don't make it tight until you're both in. Again, this just gets a bit of Loctite on there. Okay, and it goes. Okay, now before you make this too tight, it's best to actually get this bracket so that it's nice and tight up against the side. And then once you've got the bracket on tight, then you tighten up the screws. So you don't want the bracket to move around. Okay, so that's that in. Continue by just putting this all back in. Don't forget your screw, your spring. Okay. Okay, that was a bit painful for the side. So let's just put these screws back in. And again, I've only had to take this off because this base plate is damaged and the thread's gone on it. It won't be the same when I do the other side. So that's on there. Now, while I've got this off, I'm actually going to put a new flipper bat on. So I've got a new replica Bally flipper bat, original Bally flipper bat. So let me just get that through there. So that's roughly in place now, and just tighten this a little bit. So I can test whether this has been set up correctly. I made a bit of a hodgepodge of the wires, to be honest. It wasn't a particularly good job. Anyway. So this wire here is the one that gets grounded by the board that triggers this to fire. So I can simulate that by putting one side of this alligator lead to this side. You don't want to do it on the other side, you'll blow the fuses. And then this side I can just simply touch to ground. So let me go and do it the other way around by attaching this side to the ground braid. The other side of my test cable is now attached to the ground braid. If I touch this, it should fire. It just shows that that is now set up properly. So that's really good. I'm going to go ahead and do this side now quickly. It should be a lot easier. But let me start by turning the game off. Okay, so actually having a look at this one, this is an interesting case actually, and you have to be really careful on this. So you'll notice that if you zoom in here, let me see if this will work. Here you can see that the power cables are on the right hand side, and the cable that goes back to the board, the green cable, is on the left, and the banded sides on this particular coil are on facing the right, so that makes sense. But on the replacement coil I've bought, if you look at that carefully, you'll notice that the banded sides are on the left hand side. So if I simply went and replaced this in the same order, it would cause all sorts of problems. Because of the banding size, you can see where the banding is. This one here will be the green wire, and then you'll get your central single wire that comes from the end of stroke switch onto the middle pin, the middle lug, and then the far, which will become basically now the far left lug, will be the ones which is now on the right, which is the same as where the banded side is. Again, this is really important you get this right. So let's start with that and we'll go back from there. Let's start by cutting off this one, and again we want to make sure we get this right, and I'll try and do a better job with getting my wires untangled this time around. So this is going to get onto the side which is non-banded, which is in fact going to end up being on the right. So let's get that on first. Let's get the soldering iron on. So here we go. Nice. Non-banded side, in it goes, and I'm just going to get that on first. So, because if I screw that up, it's not nice. Okay, that's one. Let's do the central lug next. This comes off this end of stroke switch. That's going to go onto the central lug. Okay, and then the last one is the trickier one of the two. So you can see those are on nicely now, because this has actually got 3 wires connected into it. One goes to the end of stroke switch, and then two of them go off onto the other components. So let us cut those off. Let's quickly strip those back. A bit fiddly with 3 wires, but you can do it. Okay, it's not pretty, but it works. So because I don't have the same issue with the bad thread on this one, I'm just going to take the coil stop off. That's a lot easier than stuffing around. Okay. We'll step out, coil out. We need the brand new coil in there now. Coil stop just goes it back in. Again, we need our Loctite fluid again. Little drop on it. Okay. Before I tighten this up, I just want to make sure that I've got it correctly lined up. Get the second one in first. So, Loctite fluid, in it goes. Okay, so now we've got it in position. You want to get this as tight up against there as you can, as square as you can, and then you tighten up the screws. Okay, and that's in place. Let's test that I haven't cocked this up. So that's the lead that goes back to the thing. I'm going to touch on that. First I'm going to ground this. Turn on the machine. So the other end of this is grounded, and if I touch on this, hopefully it fires. So that is pretty good. One thing I have noticed is this leaf switch here, you want to make sure that you're getting proper separation. Otherwise you keep not only the hold on, but the power coil pod on, and you'll burn your coil out pretty quickly. So that's that. We're going to move on to the next thing, which is the leaf switches on the flipper buttons. So it looks like this has made an improvement, but still it's still just a little bit on the soft side. Kind of makes it, but just. So I'm not sure if I'm being unrealistic here, but the next stop is to do the flipper buttons, and then we'll go into the back box and redo the connectors. If you like this video, you can subscribe, you can click like, you can leave a comment, you can stay in contact by subscribing to find out how I get to the bottom of this eventually. Thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.